of all the sports, even boxing.
Yeah.
But I was still lonely inside.
So then when that evangelist went to Ipswich,
Yes.
at your city, you gave your heart to God.
I did, yes, and the loneliness just went away. I continued to play the sport because I enjoyed it, but the loneliness was gone.
So you started serving God at that age.
Yes.
And then I understood that you went to Japan to minister to Japanese people there.
That's right, yes. Well, converted at the age of 15, and then I went into a Christian Bible college for 2 years to train for full-time ministry.
At
it
that
was, sorry?
In that age.
No, I was around about 20 years of
20
age
years
at the
of
time,
age,
yes.
yeah.
In that period of time between 15 and 20, I served in my church, in the youth department, I preached fairly regularly. I even preached in the open air on the street corner.
Oh, wow.
I enjoyed that very much. That was when I was in Christian Bible College. I began to seriously seek the will of the Lord for my life, what I was going to do with my life. And God led me to inquire about Christian missionary service in Japan.
In Japan.
That was in 1965.
So you went there 1965.
Yes, we left in 1965 to go to Japan.
So how many years have you been there in Japan to minister the Japanese people?
Well, we lived in Japan for a total of 11 and a half years. And we came home just once during that period of time. So we lived actually in Japan for 11 and a half years, from 1965 to 1976.
76.
Mm-hmm.
And some of your kids were born there, or?
Yes, one of our children was born there. John was actually born there. I understand that your wonderful Filipino know John, and John was born in Japan.
Yeah, many people know about John because he went around Mindanao to preach the gospel like what you did when you were young.
Yes. Well, like father, like son.
So your heart is really to reach out people in other countries, and that's what you are doing. You're doing still to the minister the Japanese people.
That's
right here in Queensland.
That's right. Yes, here on this wonderful Gold Coast, Surfers Paradise. The Japanese Christian church there is called the Japanese Christian Fellowship. It's part of the local Assembly of God Church, which is affiliated with the Australian Assembly of God, located right in the centre of Surfers Paradise, Gold Coast, Queensland.
Pastor Bruce, do you have any difficulty in reaching out the Japanese when reaching out to them because of their language? You don't know how to speak their language?
Well, I didn't know how to speak their language, but when I went to Japan 31 years ago now, I first of all attended a language school for 2 years. Did very little Christian work at all apart from an English Bible class, but I went to a language school and I learnt to speak Japanese. So yes, I can speak Japanese fluently.
So, is it so? How did you was that? What is the difference between reaching out the Japanese and reaching out the Australian people for Christ? Is there any hardship or difficulties at all?
Well, certainly for someone like myself who is not a native-born Japanese, there are, first of all, the difficulties of language. Even though I speak Japanese well, I don't speak it as well as a native-born Japanese, so there is a language difficulty.
That's one,
Then there's a cultural difficulty, of course.
Yes.
Also, it's different ministering to Japanese here in Australia than ministering to Japanese in Japan.
In Japan, yeah.
And the reason for that is that they are outside of their cultural environment. And therefore here on the Gold Coast and in Australia, the Japanese are, I think, a little easier to reach than if they are in their own cultural environment.
You found it that way?
Yes.
But, in the Philippines, it's more easier to reach out to people there when you are there in the Philippines than they are here in Australia. It's a different thing. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
Because I reach out people here in Australia, and it's not easy to reach them out for Christ. Because some Filipinos are already in the culture of the Australian people.
Yes.
So, I found that way. So you have found that in that way also in
Well, I think
Japanese people.
so far as the Japanese people and their their way of looking at things is concerned, it's a lot easier because they don't have the restraints of their culture. Also, they don't have the family ties and links in Australia that they do have in Japan. Here on the Gold Coast, there is a peculiar situation that exists among the Japanese people. First of all, there are over 3,000 permanent Japanese residents here on the Gold Coast. They are people who are either retired here or they are business people, and they live and work here on the Gold Coast, over 3,000 of them. Now those people are very much involved in the Australian society. The second group of Japanese are those who come here only for a short time and they work mainly in the tourist industry. Those people are hard to reach mainly because they are working so much. They're working 7 days a week, probably 8 to 10 hours every day. They are very hard to reach.
Pastor Bruce, do you have any hardship while you were in Japan as a missionary there, like financial thing or to live there or?
Well, the mission society that we were working with was what is called a faith mission, in that we simply made our needs known to the Lord, and He made those needs known to God's people, who then supported us in a financial way. So I suppose, in that sense, we never knew exactly when our money was going to come, or even if it was going to come, and how much was going to come. So it taught us to be very careful about our money. So, but it was a wonderful experience because one, it taught us really the life of faith. It taught us how we can depend upon God for everything.
That's right.
I'll tell you an interesting story.
Okay.
One time I needed to buy a new shirt, and I didn't want to pay a lot of money for it, so I went downtown looking in some of the men's clothes shops. And there, right in the clothes shop, was a shirt, and the brand name was exactly the same as my surname, which was Edwards. So I thought that was the shirt I should buy, and I got a good bargain as well. So God can provide all your needs in a very special way.
Do you reach out to Japanese people in the mountains or just in the city when you were there?
When I was there, we lived both in the mountainous regions and in also the big cities as well. So we had the opportunity to minister amongst the farming community and then also amongst the business community in the city. We lived in both circumstances.
So you have no hardship in reaching them of transport, something like transport, or not like in the Philippines that you have to go somewhere and you have to ride any a push bike or a motorbike?
Not really. Certainly when you get out into the country areas, you need a small car of some kind if you're going to go right up into the mountain valleys. But Japan really is not a very large country, and of course it is a very modern country, and so it has a very modern transportation system. Now, from a living point of view, it was very easy to live in Japan. Everything was so modern.
And when they realized that you are a missionary, did you have something reaction that they don't like you or something?
Interestingly enough, no, I don't think so. Generally speaking, missionaries in Japan were well received, actually, in spite of the opposition during wartime between, say, Japan and the Western culture, the Western countries. But since the war, no, most missionaries who have come there, especially Australians, are very welcome indeed. The Japanese seem to be very interested in Australian people. And so that's why now there are lots of Japanese coming to Australia as tourists as well. And so 30 years ago I went to Japan as a missionary to reach the Japanese. Now the Japanese are coming to me. So there's a big challenge for the Christian church here in the Gold Coast to reach the Japanese people.
And were you able to disciple some Japanese that they are now pastors also in Japan?
Well, I was attached to 2 churches in Japan, and yes, there are young people who were young people then, but who are now in full-time Christian ministry.
Under your church there?
That's right, yes.
Praise God.
Yes,
so they are now reaching out to Japanese people there?
Yes, they are, yes.